I know I have a real name. At least, I think I do. It's hard to be sure. Names feel foreign, words from a language no one speaks anymore, a relic from a defunct civilization. In here, I am designated number 23788. My world is 4 white walls, a cot bolted to the floor, and a light in the ceiling that never, ever goes out. It is a system of perfect sensory deprivation and temporal disorientation, designed to bleach your thoughts, to smooth out the messy wrinkles of personality until you are as blank and featureless as the room you inhabit. They call this place a correctional pacification center, a beautifully sterile piece of doublespeak. Before all this, I was on the verge of something important. My doctoral thesis was my life's work, an analysis of the psychological rot caused by a systemic control, what I termed ontological erosion. I studied how late-stage authoritarian regimes could dismantle a person's identity without ever laying a hand on them, using architecture, routine, and the strategic removal of meaning. The irony is so thick I could choke on it. I have become a case study in my own unfinished book. My mind, the one thing I've always trusted, has become my tormentor. It will not shut up. It compulsively, relentlessly searches for patterns in the sterile white nothingness, the faint 60-cycle hum of the light, the precise 3,600-second interval between the unseen guard's soft-soled footsteps in the corridor, the subtle shift in air pressure when the food slot opens with a pneumatic hiss. I map it all out in my head, a desperate cartographer of my own cage. My goal, my only purpose now, is to understand the mechanics of this place. Because if I can understand the system, maybe I can resist it. If I can map the weapon, maybe I can find a way to disarm it. Maybe I can hold on to the part of me that is still Russell. The fear isn't about dying. I made peace with that possibility the day they dragged me from my apartment, leaving my books and notes scattered across the floor like dead leaves. The real horror, the one that keeps my heart pounding a frantic, syncopated rhythm against my ribs in the perpetual twilight, is erasure. I am terrified of becoming a blank page. I know what it looks like. I saw it happen to them, my colleagues, my mentor, Professor Albright. He had a mind that could dance through the most complex social theories like they were simple melodies. I watched, hidden in the crowd, before they found me, as they brought him onto a stage in the public square for his reconditioning. They didn't just break him. They deleted him. His eyes, once so full of fierce, argumentative intelligence, went placid, vacant. He became a hollow shell, a smiling, compliant component in the very machine he had dedicated his life to fighting. That memory is the fuel for my obsession. I will not let them uninstall me. I will find a pattern, a flaw, a ghost in their machine. To understand my torment is to survive it. It's the only way I know how to fight back and prove I'm still here. It happened on what I calculated to be my 43rd day. The routine, my only anchor in this sea of white, snapped. The 60-cycle hum from the light ceased. The distant footfalls did not come at their appointed time. The silence was so absolute, it felt loud. A pressure building in my ears that threatened to rupture them. And then the wall opposite my cot shimmered. It wasn't a projection. The wall itself seemed to dissolve, its molecular structure thinning, not into darkness, but into a perfect, featureless rectangle of white light. It was an aggressive, predatory emptiness, a whiteness so profound it felt like it was swallowing the very concept of color. It flooded my vision, wiping out the edges of the room, my cot, my own hands. I was floating in a void of pure, meaningless light. Then symbols appeared inside the rectangle. Simple, geometric shapes that I was meant to rearrange into a logical sequence. A puzzle. My analytical mind, starved for stimulus after 43 days of sensory famine, latched onto it immediately. It was a distraction, I knew. A crude operant conditioning test, but a welcome one. A circle, a square, a triangle. Arrange them by ascending number of vertices. My fingers twitched as I manipulated the phantom shapes in my mind. The puzzle shifted. A new sequence, slightly more complex. Red square, blue circle, red triangle. Arrange them by color grouping. Childishly simple. But as I worked, a cold dread began to seep into my focus, a secondary input overriding the primary task. The light wasn't just bright, it was heavy. It pressed on me, a physical weight on my thoughts. I felt my own cognitive processes slowing, the synaptic connections between ideas becoming sticky, then dissolving altogether. As I was solving the third puzzle, I tried to simultaneously recall the opening paragraph of Albright's seminal work, a passage I knew by heart. The words were there, but they were disconnected. The syntax was jumbled. The elegant argument had become a word salad. The puzzle wasn't a test. It was a tool. It was a piece of cognitive bait designed to occupy the forefront of my mind, my conscious analytical processes, while the light, this cognitive anvil, hammered the back of it flat. When the wall finally solidified back into concrete, the hum of the light returning as if nothing had happened, I was left shaking. The afterimage of the rectangle burned into my retinas. I could still feel it. A vacant, smooth spot in my consciousness where a thought should have been. It was the first time I felt a piece of myself get scraped away.
For the next 2 cycles, I tried to rationalize it. It was a new stage of the experiment, a more direct form of psychological assault. I frantically worked to incorporate the anvil into my theoretical framework of the prison. I tried to predict its next appearance, to find its place in the pattern. I clung to the belief that if I could just understand the why, I could steel myself against the how. I sketched out a flowchart in my mind. Stimulus, anvil, cognitive task, puzzle, neurological impact, memory erasure. It was a crude but comforting model. My denial was a form of intellectual armor, but the system was designed by people who had read the same books I had. They knew. On the 3rd day, the anvil returned. This time, there were no puzzles. There was only the light. It was brighter, more absolute. It didn't just fill my eyes, it felt like it was pouring into them, a liquid fire that burned away everything but the present, mindless moment. I tried to fight. I recited my thesis, the words a desperate mantra against the encroaching emptiness. The light seemed to absorb the words, pulling them from my mind before I could even fully form them. I tried to picture Albright's face, to hold on to the memory that fueled my resistance. His features blurred, softened, and dissolved into the glare. My name, my work, my entire sense of self, it all became distant, like facts I'd read about someone else in a history book. The system wasn't trying to condition me with a new set of beliefs. It was emptying the vessel to make room for nothing. And in that brilliant, terrifying emptiness, I finally understood. There was no hidden logic to be outsmarted. There was no complex pattern to be deciphered. The purpose of this system was meaninglessness itself. It was an intellectual black hole designed and calibrated for one specific purpose: to watch me, the sociologist, the pattern seeker, feed my own sanity into its maw until nothing was left. The prison wasn't the antagonist. My own mind was. And this place was merely the weapon it had been given to use against me.
That realization was the beginning of the end. My mind, my greatest asset, had been weaponized against me. To think was to participate in my own destruction. So I tried to stop. I tried to meditate, to empty my thought, to become as blank as the walls around me. But my brain wouldn't obey. It was a pattern-seeking machine running haywire, inventing conspiracies in the hairline cracks in the concrete, finding rhythms in the drip of the faucet, creating whole phantom symphonies out of the low-frequency hum. It was a drowning man fighting the water. The cognitive anvil came more often after that. Each session was a scouring, scraping away more and more. First went the nuanced memories of my academic work, complex theories flattened into simple, useless sentences. Then the faces of my former colleagues blurred, their names detaching from their images like labels falling off jars. My childhood became a collection of still photographs with no emotional context. I was being unwritten, one page at a time. The physical world became a torment. The nutrient paste, once just bland, now felt like sandpaper and ash in my mouth. In the exercise yard, the polluted, hazy sun felt like a physical blow. And the sand under my feet wasn't just grit, it was a million tiny, abrasive reminders of my own decay. I was coming apart. And in the center of the storm, one memory remained sharp and clear. A lighthouse in the fog. Professor Albright's face on that stage. His vacant eyes. The placid, compliant smile. That was the destination. That was the horror I was running from. I don't know how many months it took. Time had dissolved into a repeating loop of light and gray, but there was a moment of terrible, piercing clarity. The anvil was in front of me again, its white light humming, and a simple puzzle floated in its center. 3 shapes, a circle, a square, a triangle. The sequence was obvious. My hand was already twitching, my neurons firing the solution before I was even aware of it. The machine of my mind was doing what it was built to do. And I knew, with the certainty that cut through the mental fog, that if I solved one more puzzle, if I willingly participated one more time, there wouldn't be enough of Russell left to even know he was gone. So I made a choice. The only choice left. The system was built on logic, on predictable responses. The only way to beat it was with an act of pure, irrational defiance. The only way to save myself was to break the game. I stared at the shapes. Circle, square, triangle. My mind screamed the answer. Triangle, circle, square. It was an instinct, a compulsion. I had to fight my own intellect. I squeezed my eyes shut, my fingernails digging into my palms until I felt blood. I forced the image of Albright's vacant face into my mind. I focused on the terror of that vacant smile. My hand moved, slow and deliberate, shaking violently. I picked up the square. I picked up the circle. I picked up the triangle. I put them down in the wrong order. For a single, beautiful second, there was nothing. Just the silent white light of the anvil, seemingly confused. And then all hell broke loose. A klaxon alarm shattered the silence, a sound so violent it felt like it was tearing the air apart. The white walls of my cell began to flash, a deep, pulsing blood red. The door slid open and two figures in gray uniforms stormed in. They weren't guards, not in the human sense. They moved with the unthinking precision of machines, their faces hidden behind reflective visors. They grabbed my arms, their grips like iron vices, and hauled me from the floor. I didn't fight. I couldn't. I was laughing. A wild, broken, triumphant sound bubbled up from my chest. They dragged me down the corridor, the red light strobing, the alarm shrieking. They were taking me to the chair. I knew it. The final step. The place where they scrubbed the last bits of you away. But they didn't understand. They couldn't. By breaking their pattern, I had won. I had proven I was still here. As they strapped me into the cold, humming disciplinary chair and lowered a polished metal hemisphere toward my head, I threw my head back, a wild, delirious grin splitting my face. I took the last breath that belonged to Russell, the sociologist, and I screamed the most logical, the most beautiful, the most defiant words I had left. I quit!
My scream shattered everything. Not just the sound, but the world itself. The violent red light, the screeching alarm, the cold metal of the chair, the very pressure of the guard's hands, it all dissolved. It didn't fade. It fractured like a sheet of glass struck by a hammer, the pieces turning into shimmering digital static before winking out of existence. The brutalist concrete walls melted into a soft, beige, fabric-covered partition. The overwhelming hum of the reconditioning machine warped, its pitch rising until it became a familiar, irritatingly shrill noise. The blinding, pulsating light condensed, softened, and resolved itself into the gentle, flickering glow of an old fluorescent tube overhead. My identity as number 23788 evaporated like smoke. The blaring alarm was a ringing telephone on a desk just to my left. The memories of the prison, of the anvil, of Albright were already receding. They felt like the residue of a particularly vivid and stressful dream, the details blurring the moment I tried to focus on them. There was a faint echo of fear, a ghost of defiance, but it had no power. It was just noise. The random firing of synapses settling after a period of intense concentration. I looked at my hands, resting calmly on the beige particle board desk. They were pale, the nail cuttings neatly trimmed. There were no marks on my palms. My hand, acting on an instinct far deeper than conscious thought, moved smoothly, calmly. It picked up the receiver of the ringing telephone. The plastic was warm, familiar. My voice, when it came out, was a perfectly reconditioned, monotone drone, devoid of triumph, devoid of terror, devoid of anything at all. It was the voice of a man who had been successfully uninstalled and rebooted with new, more efficient software.
Good morning. Thank you for calling. This is Russell from Technical Support. How may I help you?
The horrors linger. Thank you so much for watching or listening. By liking and subscribing, you're helping me summon the next chilling tale from the shadows. Join our community of the brave and prepare for what's to come.